In this chapter, we've got a ton to do, and it's awesome and completely dope. We're going to start with how to organize files of your exports. Then we're going to deal with what file formats you should use and shouldn't use. We're going to deal with the 12-round MMA fight regarding whether you should online bounce or offline bounce. We're going to talk about Audition and Adobe Dynamic Linking, how to use that well. We're going to deal with stems, how to get them in and out. And last but not least, we're going to show you how to turn your stereo mix and cheat it into a 5-1 mix. Let's roll. Just briefly, let's talk about file organization. When you're doing your exports and you're sending stuff out, one of the sad things, at least right now, about Audition is there's no real way to get bins or anything like that. And, you know, they're working on it. So we have to create our own organization. Otherwise, you know, things get all mucky muck. And, you know, look, a lot of digital audio workstations aren't a lot better. Pro Tools at this point is not better. Logic is certainly not better. It's just all over the map. So our organization has to show up at the Finder level or on your disk, or if you're on a PC. Here's my suggestion for keeping your files organized on your export. Let's go to the Macbeth. This is how I do the organization for me here, just so you're familiar with that. We've been looking at that the whole time, but if you haven't seen it, there it is. I've got, for the actual production After Effects, I've got approvals, regular assets, then all the audio, and then where the delivery, the visual deliveries are going to go, and anything else that I need that's going to be in here. All the Premiere profiles go there, and all the DaVinci Resolves. So you get the idea. We go to audio, and notice that in here we also have the ADR and anything that might be old that we want to keep around. Notice the color bars or labels. PC folks, you have these too. And then deliverables, there's all the Foley stuff that we want to keep around. Here's my impulse responses. This is the slug video that we've been watching for Macbeth. Here are the actual mix files and all their ancillary and connected media. Here's where all the music stuff goes. These are the stems. Anything else, production sound that I might want to have separate, specific sound effects that are not a part of the library that I may have developed specifically for this, and then anything that was voiceover. So for us, we have deliverables. In the deliverables folder, my strong suggestion is that you create your own kind of thing here, like this. 5.1 final, print master. I say print master because sometimes the word master can be used for documents and things like this. That's great and fine. The word final, but print master means this is the thing we're going to use. This is the thing that was printed specifically for the use. It's a Hollywood term for we print master this. This is the final that we want to send to the dub or the final people assembling the elements, the visual and the audio. So we have a 5.1 print master, and then we're going to have a left-right print master, always, and then we're going to have stems. And those stems can be 5.1. This would be 5.1 print master stems. And left-right print master stems. And you're like, well, what's the difference between print master stems and left and right print master? Good question. The 5.1 print master is the entire mix, the whole kit and caboodle, bounced out one way or another, in real time or not, and printed. The left and right print master is the same thing, but a left and right down mix, or indeed a specific mix that you've made to make it perfect. Under stems, in print master stems, you'll have stems like the M&E, the music and effects, the dialogue only, the music only, the sound, the effects only, and then you'll have those in 5.1 and in stereo both as a down mix. So these are your deliverables, and where I strongly suggest how you organize these, because these will need to be divided up if you get a distribution deal anyway. And in here, you'll have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, etc. The last thing that you want to do is under deliverables is have AC3. What's an AC3 file? AC3 is a Dolby encoded master of your 5.1 print master. Now, they may ask you to do Dolby encodes for your stems as well. It's up to them. But also you'll have one for your left and right. And what that is, it's a compressed version, a very, very good compression that we've been using on DVDs and Blu-rays for years. But it takes your giant WAV file or AIF file or whatever, uncompressed audio, and mashes it however many channels, up to 6, into 2 channels and interleaves them and does all kinds of crazy stuff. So that when you get to your nice Pioneer decoder or whatever you've got on your head unit at home, it then creates that and makes a 6-channel discrete output to your speakers, so you hear surround. But it's only storing data instead of at, what is it? It's going to be 45 megabytes a minute. Now it's 320 kilobaud, or, well, actually it's 443 kilobaud. So a lot less. Cool. So this is how you do it. And when you do your exports, when you do your encodes, PC folks, I don't know how you're going to do this. There's tons of programs that are out there. I've never used one, so I can't advise them. But for Mac people, you're going to go and use Compressor right here. And Compressor allows you to take a 5.1 mix, all 5 files, drop it into the add file, and it'll know, oh, hey, you want to make an AC3 out of it? It makes a very, very nice AC3, and we'll go through all of that in a moment. But this is your organization, and then you've got all your deliverables. You can call this final master or whatever. I just call it deliverables. It's okay. But your print master, don't mess with that word. Your print master is your print master. That's your final output that goes to the folks that are going to do the final assembly. So what kind of files should you export to? Well, never compressed. Let's just say that. You never want to do compressed. Never MP3 or AAC or anything like that. We want always the files to be AIF or one of these. Where's my AIF? Oh, it's right here. Or WAV or some other non or lossless, even FLAC is okay, although no one wants to see that yet. But WAV or AIF is good. 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. That's all we want to see. We don't want to see anything else. What's the difference between AIF and WAV? Pretty much, as far as we're concerned, the names and whether or not PCs are happy with AIFs or not. I keep everything. It really doesn't matter. Pro Tools likes to see waves. Typically, they're kind of getting over that. But PCs love waves as opposed to AIF, and Macs kind of don't care. In your final delivery, unless it says in your final delivery, don't deliver AIFs, deliver AIFs. Because most of the post houses run Macintoshes, and that's the thing. But the bottom line is lossless audio, AIF, WAV, go with that, and go with God. Now, there are new formats that are out there, of course, that are coming that probably there's 5 new ones every day that come out. So by the time you've seen this, it's probably 100 since I've recorded it. But whatever is lossless, and of course, the distributor wants to see, that's what you're going to do. Now, let's talk about real-time bounce versus offline bounce. Now, in Audition, you have the ability to do a multi-track mixdown. You can do the entire session, and once you hit OK, it will render it offline. What does that mean? That means it won't sit here and play through the tracks. It'll do it as fast as the computer that you're running it on will allow it to. It has a lot of good benefits and only a couple of bad benefits. Can you have a bad benefit? Detractions, demerits, whatever. You know what I mean. The good things are, hey, man, you don't have to sit around and wait for this thing to burn in real time. Another good thing is that if you're at the edge of what your computer processor will do, and you're getting little pops and clicks and dropouts, which it tells you down here in Audition if you have sample dropouts, then you don't have that problem because it will only go as fast as it can. And even if it's less than real time, you still won't get any pops and clicks. In any digital audio workstation that I've worked on, that's the case, which is lovely. The other really nice thing is that if there is any processing truncation going on, what does that mean? That means that, well, let's see, if I go here and I've got all of these processes going on in real time, not in pre-render or whatever, and if the digital audio workstation stroke computer is having to cut off some of the math just so that it can keep up with real time, in offline bounce, it goes through all the math and makes sure all the stuff is getting computed to its most beautiful and rendered form. It doesn't really happen that often in modern digital audio workstations. They just make you drop samples instead. But I have heard the difference not too many years ago between an online and an offline, or real-time and an offline bounce. And so I like the offline bounce. Now, real-time has a couple of really important advantages. The first and most important advantage is when you're burning real-time, you're listening to it go down, and hopefully you're there with your notepad, as I've shown you how to do, making notes. And by the time you get to the end of your burn, if your notes, and you'll always have notes, if your notes are really minor and are okay, then you got a master. If your notes are not minor, then you know that, wow, that was a bad burn. Let's go back and fix these last things and burn again. Granted, you have to wait another however long that is. If you have a 2-hour feature, well, then you're waiting another 2 hours. But at least you never burned a master that to your ears sounded bad, as opposed to the odd, and it happens, odd chance that in your offline bounce, something happened and you weren't aware, and then you won't even know because you haven't listened down to your offline bounce. You trusted that it was okay, and then it goes to the distributor, or worse, to a screening, and it's horrible. There's a big glitch or some loud thing or some dialogue is muted and you forgot about it, which is why if you're doing offline bounce, I mean, it's really hard to do, especially after you've been listening to this thing for thousands of hours, to listen to your online bounce or your offline bounce in a playback. Watch it. Make sure that you got it. Make sure that it's right. Now, again, modern day digital audio workstations, if it plays from one end to the other and it sounds good and there's no problems, there's an incredibly small amount of chance that you're going to not have that on your offline bounce. But, if you're OCD or if you had bad experiences, as I have, it's good to watch. The second great thing about real-time bouncing is you can bill for it. Now, think about this. You've got, let's go to our deliverables here for a second. You got deliverables. You got a 5.1 print master, and you got a 2-hour feature. Well, that's 2 hours you just got to bill for. Now, you can't bill for the left-right print master because almost in every digital audio workstation, maybe except Logic, you can do a down mix at the same time you're burning the 5.1, and that's okay. But let's talk about stems. You got to do print master stems on dialogue, 2 hours. Print master stems on music, 2 hours. FX, 2 hours. M&E, 2 hours. Well, how many 2 hours was that I just came up with? 10. And that's if everything worked okay and you just hit a button and you make it work. You just burned an entire day of billable hours, if you're doing that, to real-time burns. And you've watched and listened and made sure everything's good, and you can assure your client that it's all good. So that's another good reason. Me, no one ever wants to pay for burns anymore. So I don't want to have to sit there and listen to them all. I do offline balancing myself. So, but govern thyself accordingly, and let me know if you have any trouble. Take 2 of these. Call me in the morning. So how do we get this stuff out of Adobe Audition? There's a bunch of ways. The first way is via dynamic linking. If you have kept your dynamic link alive, which is a good idea, from Premiere into Audition, you can select whatever portion you want or all of it, File, Export to Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, you don't have to be dynamically linked to do this, but if you are, it's easier and quicker. In the Adobe Premiere Pro window, you have some things that you don't have as easily access to otherwise. Look at this. I can take each track and make it its own stem. I can take the breathing track, mark VO, mark ADR. I can basically make all these tracks long, giant audio files, which is sometimes useful if you want to make a backup or an archive, or you want to have that kind of control, especially if someone's going to be going into another DAW. Then you have export each bus as a stem, the dialogue bus, the sound effects bus, all those buses. Or you can take the master output, do a mono, a stereo, or if you have it, a 5.1 file, and then the opportunity to open it all in Adobe Premiere Pro. These, especially each track as a stem, is a really easy way to get that stuff out. Bus as a stem, what's going to happen is it's going to take every bus, including your monoverbs and your reverbs. Really not that useful. And then, of course, your mix down. I have a better way of doing all of this except for each track as a stem. Each track as a stem is really, really useful. The other way, which I'll show you how to do it from the mix down menu, is you have to sit there and click on every track, which is a total drag. But this one will just go bam, and you're good to go. Pretty much the only thing that I can think of you'd want to use from Adobe Premiere Pro in this export to APP thing. And you're like, well, hey, Mark, wait a minute. How do we get files back to Adobe Premiere Pro if we're not going to go like this? Because it'll obviously open it in Adobe Premiere Pro and the timecode will be sunk. Well, that's what we have 2pops for. That's what we have timecode for. And since you're already going to have separate outputs of the audio from the video anyway, as a part of your deliverables, wouldn't you rather just have control over where you're going to send them and that they're going to be separated anyway, and then you're going to bring them into Premiere Pro by hand, double check. You're going to have to double check and make sure that they're sunk anyway. So, and given the fact that this is kind of a limited way of burning, I would only use this if I had to export each track as a stem. Well, Mark, what about dynamic linking? Yeah, I know you can dynamic link and it'll send it back, but I still don't think it's as useful because the nature of your deliverables is always going to be with audio separate. And you're like, well, no, it isn't. I'm going to deliver on the internet. Well, you say that until somebody wants to buy it from you, and then you've never done separate outputs of audio, and you got to go hunting through files a year later that you don't have any idea of what the right file nomenclature is. And in this case, it's going to make the file nomenclature for you and add the tracks. And obviously you can change the name of this, but I don't find it as useful as what I'm about to show you to do. The next things that I would strongly suggest is export with Adobe Media Encoder. What's great about this is you don't have to wait around. Adobe Media Encoder will come up via dynamic linking. It will also burn with the picture that you have. It'll make a movie file if you so choose. It's coming up right now. So see now if I look, here's Adobe Media Encoder waiting for us to send it something. I can choose how I want the video to be, H264 to DNxHR. I can also choose, all the various presets. I have full control over it. And then in here, this is where it gets cool. I only get 2 channels because I'm right now on H264. I can choose any 2 channels I want. Any track, any bus. They're in order. I can't choose these because they're 5.1. Here's the master stereo chosen. No problem at all. I can click OK. And then when I hit OK here, it will send all of the data to Media Encoder here, which is super useful because once it's in Media Encoder, I can go back to work. I can go and make another stem out and make another one, and it will create what do you call it? A queue. Use the good British term. Make a queue of things, and I can go have a beer while this is doing its renders, which is super, super useful. So this is, and also Media Encoder is, from what I can tell, a much faster way, a much more processor efficient way of doing your media. You don't have to use H264, of course. You could just do straight audio, and then it won't send video, which is even faster. And you can do your surround outputs and everything like that, depending on what you want to do. So that's super useful. Love it. Those are the 2 intra-Adobe possibilities, ME and PP. Then straight from within Adobe Audition is just putting it to work to do your masters. You have a time selection, you have entire session, and then you have selected clips. So you can burn individual clips, which is fine. The time selection doesn't show up until I do this. Once I do any kind of selection, then I have the capability to do a time selection if I want. Here is a pretty similar looking window. I've got the name of the file, where I want to put it, the kind of file that I want to use. Again, please don't use anything but WAV and AIF. I mean, maybe FLLC, but don't do anything else. Then you've got your source sample rate and channels, how much of a bit rate you want. 24 is probably going to do you just fine. Sample rate, leave it at 48K. And then here, 24-bit integer. Again, we want that if you're doing AIF. And then here, this is where you choose which buses are going to go out. You can choose your stereo, your mono, your 5.1, much like we saw in Send to Premiere Pro. But again, now we've got tracks, and you can select the tracks that you want, or I guess I lied a little bit. You could do that, and it selects all the tracks. That's super useful, actually. So I just ran out of reasons for using the Premiere Pro window. And then here are all of your buses that you can choose to select however you'd like. Time selection versus entire session, and you're ready to go. You want to include markers and other metadata in your burns if you have markers that are of note. And then you can open the files here in the file menu if you want after you're done exporting. Now, here's the problem with doing this. Once you hit OK, you can't work in Audition until it's done burning. And Audition isn't the quickest burning tool. Isn't the quickest burning tool in the shed. So, expect to lose some time if you're going to do it this way. And moreover, you don't really have any benefit for doing it this way, unless you needed some kind of a special, selection here, which is fine. But I strongly suggest you send things to Media Encoder, and obviously you have to if you're going to do embed picture with it. So this is how you get your stuff out. If we go back to our mix, we would have, if we wanted to do our dialogue bus only, not a problem. We can burn it straight from here. This is a 5.1 burnout, sound effects, Foley, mix, and you can do them all at once if you're not going into if you're not doing any mastering like this on your surround output. So if you're doing the mastering on the buses themselves, no problem. Burn them straight away, burn them all at once, and you can move forward. So that's how we get stuff out of Audition. There really isn't another way. You can't really open up another channel and record things into it real time like you can in Pro Tools or Logic or one of these other. They don't have that kind of routing capability here in the summer of 2016. So that's how we do it. All right, exportation. How do we get stuff out of our digital audio workstations? Well, Logic, Pro Tools, Saw, Cubase, Performer, they're all pretty straightforward in ways in getting things out. Most of you probably aren't going to use Performer or Pro Tools for that matter. And if you are, they're kind of their own little altered beasts. And we can talk about that on the forum if you'd like, or on the blog. Certainly tell you how to do that. There's some really cool routing options for Pro Tools that allow you to burn things all at once, which is super cool. All your stems and things like this. In Audition, it's its own little beast, not quite yet able to do what we wished it would without some special routing. But, every program has to have its special routing, so it's not that unusual. If you've been mixing in 5.1 or other surround modes where you actually are listening to the speakers themselves, not on some kind of headphone binaural thing like we've been doing with Spatial Audio Designer, then you've already got a lot of the routing taken care of because those speakers are going out. But even still, what you're going to have to do is take your buses, the DX, SFX, Foley, MX, and Ambience buses, and any other buses that are not otherwise summed here. You're going to have to bus them to a 5.1 burn channel. If your master isn't 5.1, then you're going to have to go to a bus. And we do that by doing track, add 5.1 bus track. And we're going to call this the print. This is called the 5.1 print master bus. We're going to take this and send it to the master. But now all of these channels are going to the 5.1 print master bus. Another 5.1 bus architecture, not a big deal. Now everything's going to show up here, and then this is going to go out separately. Okay, what do we do with this? Well, there's a couple things we need to do with the 5.1 bus master. We can copy over all of our parametric EQs and things like this. We would, in actual fact, do an EQ, parametric EQ. We would save this as a preset and then bring up that preset here so that we have everything across all 5 channels. And same thing with the compressor, same thing with everything else. And we would just bring it over so that our mastering shows up here, because this is going to be our new, if you could see me put quotes up, finger quotes, master, not this master. This master channel now becomes only a listening master, and this becomes an actual print master. From here, what we need to do is we can export easily by doing multi-track. We do the entire session, and then we say, instead of doing master output, no thank you, now we're going to go to the bus side where it says print master bus, and then we'll have a 5-channel output, which is super dope and super nice. And that's how we would burn our 5.1. To get a stereo down mix, which is also required, right? All 5 channels mixed down. You can do it a couple of different ways. One, if you're using Spatial Audio Designer, Spatial Audio Designer has the capability of doing that down mix for you from within the plugin itself, which is super dope. We're going to pull up the mix. This is going to pull up a blank session. But you can, once you turn off virtualized speaker, actually, now all of your 5.1 channels are summed in a really cool Spatial Audio Designer way to stereo, and you can just burn directly from the master itself. But if you haven't been using Spatial Audio Designer, which you probably haven't, especially if you've been mixing to 5 discrete speakers, you have to do another step. How do we get to a down mix? What we have to do is instantiate the plugin for the down mix here, and that is under Amplitude and Compression, Channel Mixer. It's a little wonky how they have this set up, and I would rather that it was in decibels, not percentages. But if we go here and we say to the preset, down mix at 2.0 stereo, this is the ITU standard. ITU standard is that you've got the left channel is going to the left 100%, the right channel is going to the right 100%, the center channel is reduced in both left and right by 3 dB. The LFE is off, the left surround is 3 dB, and the right surround is 3 dB down in the right channel. Now, I don't like that at all. Mine is here, where 3 dB, and I've done a little testing. Adobe's working on this. We're having an argument about it, but that's okay. You can do theirs, which in terms of what 3 dB down is, which is 70%. I'm guessing it's actually a little more around 78, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. So the left is still 100%. The right is 100%. The center channel is still minus 3 dB in both. I turn up the LFE, but I only turn it up 6 dB. Well, why do we do that? Well, we may have, and in every mix that I do, there's always stuff going to the LFE that is going nowhere else. And if you don't put it in, it doesn't show up in a down mix, right? This is taking all 5 channels and mashing them down into 2. And if you don't turn up the LFE in your channels, those cool sounds aren't going to be there. And then I have the surround down 6 dB in left and right. That's how I do it. It's not the ITU standard, but I think it sounds better and translates better. And I have this as a preset, which we'll make available to you. So here, now when I play, notice that it's only 2 channels and it's in a 5.1. And that's super helpful, right? It's taken all 5 of these buses and all 6 of their channels and master them down into 2. The problem is, if I burn this print master channel, I'm going to get the same thing, a 6-channel interleave file with only data on those 2 channels and 4 of those channels blank, which means I have to bring it back into Audition on a new file, a new session, and then strip those out. It's kind of a mess. So we don't want that. What we want to do is route this to another bus, a stereo bus, right? So now we can bounce that down mix at the same time. So let's do that. Track, add stereo bus track. We're going to call this left, right, print master with a capital, please. Great. And now we're going to take this output and go bus, left, right, print master. Now if I play, nice and stereo and no problem at all. Great. So you're like, well, there's no problem. Now we can burn the 5.1 and the stereo, right? Well, you can at the same time, but the problem is that the channel mixer is still making our 5.1 2 channels and a 5.1 master. So we're not actually going to get the 5.1. You can see it here. I'm only getting 2 channels on my 6 channels. And this one's going to be okay, but this one's not. So how do we do that? How do we deal with that? Well, what we need to do is make another 5-1 channel. Now stay with me here. This is going to get a little complex for just a second. I'm going to add another bus track. I'm going to call this, I'm going to change this name. This is going to now be the 5-1 master. Wrong. This is going to be the 5-1 print master. And notice it changes all the names up here. This is only going to be called the 5-1 master. I'm going to take this channel mixer and move it over here. And I'm going to get rid of it here. This is now going to go to the 5-1 master. And the 5-1 master channel is going to go, guess where? To the left, right, print master. Now, what have I done? I've taken all of these channels that are going to the 5-1 print master. They're still going here. I have a 5-1 master here, no problem. And nice and pure, no weirdness. Now, these are going to go to the 5-1 master. Notice the EQ is in here doing its mastering for us on the LFE channel, which is what we like. Then it's going to go here, but I'm not going to burn this channel. This channel simply serves to create the down mix that then is sent to the left-right print master. So when I play, notice I got all 6 channels running here, only those 2 here, and they're getting routed here. So when I go to do my export, multi-track mix down, entire session, I click here. Which ones do I select? Buses. I want the 5-1 print master, and I want the left-right print master. If I select this, I'm going to get, right, 6 channels of only 2 and 4 that are blank. So this will give me my print master, beautiful 6 channels, and my 2-channel down mix. And what's nice is that this 2-channel down mix will have the parametric EQ and the mastering settings that I want. Now I can, when I do my print master, also do a mastering. And I strongly suggest you do, because when you merge all of these channels together, sometimes you're going to have much louder volumes than you otherwise might if they were separated. So I definitely suggest that you put in your hard limiter and you do our settings that we know to do, the same as we do for surround. Whoops, this is be minus 0.02. And it's not wanting to do that. We'll just go like this, turn up that thing and turn this down and unlink the channels. And that's how we do and make sure we don't go over 0. Now you can do additional mastering, compression, anything that you want, because now this is just a stereo channel and there's no problems with that. We know how to do all of those things. Cool. So again, 5-1, everything, all your buses go to a 5-1 channel. You do your mastering, EQs and everything else. That gets routed to another 5-1 channel that has the down mixer or the channel mixer. That gets routed to a stereo print master that may have also mastering plugins, but certainly a hard limiter of some kind. You burn the left and right print master and the 5-1 print master. So that's the routing in Audition. Every digital audio workstation is slightly different, but it is the same process. You have a 5-1, and then you have to make a down mix of the 5-1. 7-1 also makes good down mixes. Above 7-1, using a down mix plugin is a terrible idea. You're going to actually have to do a special kind of routing and a special kind of mix. It actually will be a different mix, especially in 11.1. It's one of the reasons why the Spatial Audio Designer plugin is so helpful, because it will happily do a really good 11.1 or a 16.1 or a 24.2 down mix to stereo, because it's really well designed to do that. Okay, so let me recap one more time. Your deliverables that you've got to deliver from here: your 5-1 theatrical, your down mix stereo theatrical, your dialogue stereo, effects, which includes sound effects, Foley, and ambience, your music, and your M&E at the cinematic dynamic range. Then DVD, all of that again, but now dialogue norm between -12 and -9. Then all of that, not again, you'll still do a stereo down mix, internet mix, which we're going to show you how to do in a second. That's left and right only. You don't need dialogue or anything crazy for that stuff. Okay. Lastly, when you do your burn, and we've talked about this, if you're doing an offline burn, you definitely want to go back and spot check your files. Make sure that they did everything they were supposed to do. Sometimes you'll forget to push a button, and unfortunately, you'll have sent it to the quality control, and they'll get mad. If you're doing a real-time bounce, you poor Pro Tools 10 and earlier people, God bless you, because you're going to spend 24 hours of your life making all of these stems and masters. You shouldn't have to do that because you'll be there listening. You were listening, right? Not out having lunch while it burned. Because if you went and had lunch while it burned, you're going to still have to spot check files. So just a little word to the wisdom there. The worst thing in the world is being at a screening and realizing you forgot to push a button or the channels were switched or some nonsense and you're in the screening room and there's nothing you can do because you didn't spot check. Now let's say you've done this whole volume and you still mixed in stereo. And then somebody comes to you and they're like, hey man, we love your movie, we think it's great. Listen, we want to give you a distribution deal, but it's contingent upon the fact that you have to deliver a 5:1 mix in 3 days. Now what are you going to do? Because you only did a stereo mix. Well, without this course, you'd be FUBAR. And there ain't no consulting your physician on that. But in this case, I've got a little cheat for you. Check it out. So the first thing you want to do is, and you might want to write this down, take all of your dialogue tracks. Hopefully you've kept your mix and it still boots. Take all of your dialogue tracks and you make a stem out of them, which although I told you to make stems before, let's say you didn't. So now you have a stereo file of all of your dialogue. Do the same thing with sound effects. Stereo file with sound effects. Do the same thing with all your music. And now at the end of this process, you've got 3 stereo files: sound effects, music, dialogue. Now, of course, you can break them up in any old way you want, but that's the general gist. Then you close that and you open a 5:1 session. And in that session, you import these 3 stereo files. And now you're going to pan them in the following way. You're going to take your dialogue, you're going to pan it directly in mono, right to the center channel. Not phantom stereo, phantom mono, nothing like that. Right to the center channel. No LFE at all. Pretty simple. Then your sound effects, you want to pan dead left and right, front, and then full LFE. Now, if you've got a ton of explosions and things like this, you want to be careful with the LFE, but that's generally the gist. Then with your music, you want to pan sort of halfway between the front speakers and the back speakers in the stereo. And full LFE, no center channel of any kind. And you're like, well, that's a little weird. Why don't you just pan them all the way back to the surround channels? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, there's a universal constant in the universe, and that is that theater owners are cheap bastards. And they're going to spend the least amount of money they can on surround speakers, and that's how it is. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the emotional architecture of my film to be in the cheapest speakers in the theater. Let's say nothing the fact that you get only those back speakers, right? You don't get the nice ones on the side. That's for 7.1. For 5.1, it's only the ones in the back. So if you put it kind of halfway, you get the benefit of the front speakers and the back speakers. And if it happens to show up in 7, you get the side ones too. So you get a nice big, broad, musical, emotional kind of wave across the audience, and that's nice. Now, some of you industrious people are already realizing that if you take a stereo channel of dialogue, which is mono, and then sum it to mono in a center channel, the dialogue is going to be 3 dB louder than it would be in a stereo mix. And for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, don't worry. Because what I'm suggesting to you is that in a 5.1 environment, there's a lot more power involved there. You've got left and right speakers going, you've got center channels, you've got all kinds of, it's just a larger situation. And if you take that dialogue and you mix it, the left and right dialogue mono, and you mix it mono in the center channel, yeah, it's 3 dB louder, it's true. But check it out. Your sound effects now also have an LFE channel that they didn't have before. And your music has 2 more channels that it didn't have before, including the surround and the LFE. So your dialogue is going to need a little extra help to get over the addition that surround sound gives it. Now, for your music channel, I just want to caution you, if you're doing like a hip hop track or something that's got super lows, again, be careful with that LFE. You may want to back it off maybe 3 decibels or more. Otherwise, you got the front row of your theater wearing speaker cones from the subwoofer. So this is a cheat. Let me repeat. This is a cheat. Do not do it this way. Mix in 5.1 dynamic cinema all the time, unless you're absolutely sure it's not going to go to the cinema. But here you are. This is a cheat. There's a lot of ways of doing this, just my cheat. I didn't tell you how to do this, and you didn't hear it from me. Look, it's not a lot of fun to put exports out, but at least get the idea that, hey man, it's done, and I've got this, and here's the deliverables, they're gonna be great. Now, look, for those of you who have old Pro Tools, and you gotta sit through this in real time, this whole process, every stem, every track, I know you like to think that that's billable, but think about it, man. The only unrenewable resource in the world, in our experience, is time. Your time, to be precise. Do you want to waste it? Not me. I want to hit offline bounce. It'll sound better anyway, and you can argue with me later about it if you like. But then you're done, and it's back to having fun with friends and drinks. So, enjoy this process because you're at the end, and it should be celebrated if you've gotten here. Export, have a beer, take a nap. Until then, we'll see you in post.